Thank you for turning to page 121. Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite games, Champions, the super role-playing game. There are several reasons why I like this game. I prefer it over such contemporaries as Villains and Vigilantes and the Marvel Superheroes game. I'm going to go into that a little bit, go into the history of Champions, and then go a little bit into the history of our Champions campaign as it's been played over the years. So, if you're quite ready, Champions, the super role-playing game. Champions, the super role-playing game, first came out in a nice box set in 1982, and it had a different kind of gaming style than other superhero role-playing games that were around at the time. I had actually started in Villains and Vigilantes in 1980. I saw a copy of that. We wanted to play a superhero game, so in 80 and 81, I played Villains and Vigilantes. Some. We didn't get into it a ton. I never really bought a bunch of support material for it. I had the good fortune of having several people in our original D&D group who were comic book fans. So it became natural for us to look for a comic book game. So Champions came out in 82 and was a box set, and bought it, really enjoyed it. It's based on a point system where you pay points for your superpowers, you pay points for your for everything in the game. You pay points for your skills, you pay points if you know other languages. This can make the game, unfortunately, rather bookkeeper heavy, and that was its main knock. Its main strength, in my opinion, was it was one of the most adaptive role-playing systems I'd ever played in that you could create literally any superhero, supervillain out of this system that you really put your mind to. So the way the system worked is everything was based up to 100 points, and for every 5 points, you would gain basically a dice. So the way that worked, everything was D6 based, and if I had a strength of 60, 60 divided by 12 is, divided by 5 is 12. That would give me a strength of 60. If I struck someone, I would do 12 dice of damage. So far, so good. So you would take that basic premise and apply it to powers. So if I wanted to create a Cyclops knockoff who had an optic beam, and I wanted that optic beam to do 14 points of damage, I wouldn't have to invest 70 character points, because 70 divided by 5 is 14. I would have to invest 70 character points into that. This leads to a lot of bookkeeping. You have to pay for your running, flight if you have it, all kinds of stuff. And then there are ways to create the character where you get advantages or disadvantages. So, for instance, if I was playing Captain America knockoff, I would have all my powers in the shield, but because the shield was something you could see and take away, that would be what was called in Champions an obvious accessible focus. So you would simply remove the shield from Cap. He no longer has those powers. Because it could be removed from Cap, I paid less for those powers. In other words, I got a bonus. So if I bought, for instance, 100 points worth of powers into the shield, as far as defense and absorption of power and things like that, I would only pay 50 active points for it. So this gave you a lot to play with the characters. If you were developing a Superman, he only has his powers under a yellow sun. That would give you a slight advantage. So Superman wouldn't be so expensive to pay for. One of the oddities of the champion system is actually a properly built Superman costs much, much less than a properly built Batman, because you really can't buy champion or buy any kind of skills at any kind of bulk discount. So Batman has to pay for all his myriad skills, whereas Superman gets a break because he needs solar energy. So this particular book that I'm showing right now was published in 1989 with excellent cover art by the magnificent George Perez, a comic book artist of DC and Marvel both. Drew, among other things, The Avengers, Justice League, New Teen Titans, very well-known artist. We were all amazed to see George Perez cover on Champions when this was published in 1989. This is actually the 4th edition of Champions, and the reason I'm focusing on it is this is still the edition that my group plays. We started in first edition, went to second, kind of skipped third because we were still playing second, and second worked fine. And first and second worked fine, but third didn't add a ton of improvement that I found. Fourth, however, brought it all together. Fourth matured the game, gave us a lot more powers, a lot more options, and a lot more ways to play the characters we wanted to play. So I'm going to show the book a little bit. As you can see, here are, for instance, sample powers. Here's a force field, a force wall. So if you want to play a Sue Richards type character from the Fantastic Four, there's your force field, force wall, and invisibility is a little later. You could buy a power like invisibility and just make it usable on others. So Sue Richards, for instance, would be able to make herself invisible or turn somebody else invisible, or both. Life support, so the Silver Surfer can fly through space, etc., etc. And then you had different advantages to the powers, such as always on. So if, for instance, I was playing a character who had steel skin, and he always had steel skin, I could buy my defensive power as always on. So you see, you get the idea. There was a lot of bookkeeping in this game. I am not criticizing that. It's one of the things I liked. But it made for expensive and hard to deal with characters. This is Stalker, a sample villain given in the book. He's essentially a master vampire. Think Count Dracula. There's a lot of bookkeeping to create this guy, and he's just a vampire. So that was one of the knocks that a lot of people had against Champions, is it was a lot of bookkeeping, and it was. I'm not really debating that, but I will defend that. Because of all the bookkeeping, you could create any kind of character you wanted. Here's a cat-based guy called Ocelot. His total points cost is 250 points. He's 150 points of disadvantages, and he started with 100 straight-up points, base points. So, as you see, there are a lot of ways you can play with and manipulate this game. We embrace Champions completely. We still play Champions a couple of times a year. I still have an active campaign. Our superhero team is the Chicago-based Protectors of Justice. They've been around since the late 80s, and their membership has varied, with our group's membership varying. But we have had a pretty stable campaign for that time. Now, one important thing that I do have to say, Champions is time-consuming to build a character and takes a long time to play. The segments, each combat segment is 1 second long. You can play about 48 seconds of Champions. If the fight has multiple people in it, you can actually end up having that take a good 3-hour game for you. So it doesn't translate real well to that, but Champions brings so much to the table. When you're playing a Ben Grimm, the Thing knockoff, obviously I love the Fantastic Four. When you're playing a Ben Grimm knockoff and he punches someone and he knocks that someone flying with the punch, you have a thing in Champions called knockback, where you get knocked back away and you slam into a wall and take additional damage. There's just a tremendous level of detail in Champions. In a future video, I'll go into the nuts and bolts of how to not only create a character, but how to actually do the combat in Champions. I just want to give a quick thumbnail as to why some people didn't find Champions that usable. I like creating Champions characters. I have to admit, once my kids were born and I had less time, I shortcutted it. I didn't bother figuring out all the points. I just figured out all the powers. It was just much easier to play the game. I had a good sense of what power levels everybody was. I was able to just create the characters without actually doing all the points. I know that's cheating. I know, oh my gosh, you can't. Yes, I can, because it's my role-playing game, and I'll play it the way I think it's fun. And also, it's what I had the time for. Now, a couple other things in our Champions campaign. We like to kind of spoof existing comic book characters. So instead of the Avengers, we have the Protectors of Justice. They could also be the Protectors of Justice could also be an anagram or a simile for the Justice League. We had, instead of Nick Fury, Max Wild. Instead of Professor Xavier and the X-Men, we had Professor Zachary and the Z-Men. Instead of the Silver Surfer, we have the Golden Glider. Instead of Green Lantern, we have White Light. You get the idea. We would just take an existing character and then put our own spin on it. Our Thor, for instance, is Storm Tosser. All the powers of Thor, none of the copyright issues. So some of the fun with this was someone would come up with a character idea and a design, and I almost always had to work with them to make the design, since I was the primary DM of this game. And they would, make it clear that they wanted to play a Spider-Man character, and rather than just call him Spider-Man, we called him Arachnid. Instead of Captain America, we had Captain Courage. Instead of Anthony Stark, we had Anton Spartan. So we would just find something that sounded similar and make it kind of our own. Marvel has ended up doing this with all their multiple universes over the last 30 years or so. Marvel Universe 616 is where our characters are. Those are our Peter Parker and Spider-Man and all that. But there are parallel universes where different things have happened and different truths exist. We just kind of did the same thing. So Champions, a very fun game, very enjoyable, much, much better if played with 3D. We have started playing it in the last 15 years or so. We started playing it with actual 3D buildings. I have cardboard buildings that scale nicely to this. So you get a sense of height. You get a sense of being able to, Spider-Man dodge around a corner, that kind of thing. It makes the game much better. So Champions, I do recommend highly. I love this game. This is right after AD&D and Traveler. I'm looking at you, Champions. Champions is also a great go-to game once you know it, like I do, where if we're going to play a D&D game, but two people have to cancel at the last minute, and suddenly I have to come up with a game because I don't want to run that particular campaign without those two people, I can just pull out the Champions characters and we can play a scenario, and it's a quick and easy pickup game. So again, you have to get to a pretty high level with this game for it to be a quick and easy pickup game, but you can get there. And frankly, it's worth the work. So Champions, the super role-playing game, does still exist. They are in the 6th edition right now. 6th edition is, I want to say, about 6 or 7 years old by this point. Hero Games is the overarching company that has the Champions. They're available on DriveThruRPG, our old friend. No, I don't work for them. Also, Hero Games has its own website where you can get a lot of the 4th edition books as well as the 5th edition. And a quick note on 5th edition Champions. Yes, I bought a ton of stuff for 5th edition. Why? Because 5th edition, almost without exception, is completely compatible with 4th edition. Very few changes, nothing really that functionally different. If I pick up a 5th edition book, I can go ahead and I can plug that supervillain into the story, into a 4th edition game. By the same token, you go ahead and just play 5th edition, and I play 4th. I play 4th because this is the book I know the best. I have the 5th edition rules. I have a ton of 5th edition supplements, a lot of which I bought off of Hero Games' website. The Hero System, one other quick note on it. Over the years, Hero System developed other alternate universes. They have Fantasy Hero, where you can play a version of D&D. They have Star Hero, where you can play a version of Traveler. They even have a version of Gamma World that you can play. So any kind of background or game you want to play, you can actually play in the Hero System universe, which is one of the things I love. It's one of the most adaptable systems I've ever seen. GURPS would be about as adaptable, but frankly, I think Champions goes even a level beyond that. So I do recommend Champions. I don't work for Hero Games, never have. They have no idea who I am. But I do recommend Hero Games. The Hero System is a lot of fun. The background and depth on the characters and the worlds that they make is really top notch. And I'll read a Champions book and I'll port a lot of it into a D&D or a Traveler game without really even thinking about it. A lot of the Star Hero stuff translates beautifully to Traveler. And in fact, there was a Hero System version of Traveler that was released in the early to mid 2000s. I will hit that in a future video. That is available on CD or thumb drive from Far Future Enterprises. The Traveler Hero is what it's called. It's the actual Traveler Universe, but done as the Hero System games. So there you have it. There's my unabashed love for Champions, the super role-playing game, and the Hero System as a whole. And I hope you give it a try. I recommend it highly. I played Marvel Superheroes game. I played Villains and Vigilantes. This is the one I kept coming home to. So that's it for today from page 121. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please leave comments and like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Well, that closes the book on another episode of page 121. Please leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.